What is up? It is a early November edition of the Splash Ag podcast. Today, I am joined by my buddy Andrew again, and given that it's a little bit of a dead period with regards to the NBA because they just announced that the season was going to start again on the December 22nd, but there's still about a week and a half until the draft, and then obviously a little bit longer until the actual season. I thought might be a good time to revisit this redrafting exercise. And so I brought on Andrew, and today we're going to redraft the 2014 NBA draft. If you haven't listened to any of the previous redrafts, you should definitely check those out. I've done 2010 to 2013, obviously about to do 2014. So without further ado, joined by Andrew. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. How about you?
Can't complain. It's the time is flying, but here we are. It's November, and it feels like the NBA just wrapped up, and now we're about to be thrown right back into the NBA, which is kind of crazy.
Right.
But anyhow, so you and I, we've both done a little bit of research, a little bit of digging. We're gonna do a 2014 NBA redraft. I've given you the odd picks. I'm gonna take the evens until through the lottery, so 1 to 14. Generally speaking, obviously this is just for fun, so there's no specific rules. If you want to draft kind of based on what you've seen so far, but you also want to throw in a little bit of hypothetical, like, oh, if they were in a better situation, I think they could have been better. Feel free. Once again, we're just having fun with this. Sound good?
Right. Yeah, I'm excited, man. Let's get this going.
All right. So right off the bat, the first pick, which was the Cavs, ironically, right before LeBron James returned to Cleveland, and also the third time they had the pick, the third time in 4 years that they had the first pick. So who you taking?
I'm gonna take Nikola Jokic with the first pick of the 2014 redraft.
Yeah. I figured based on, and we'll talk about this in a second. So I'll just say right off the bat. So with the second pick, I'm going to take Embiid. So I guess my first question to you is, what pushed Jokic over Embiid for you?
Well, I think it's just seeing Jokic's performance in the 2020 playoffs, just him being able to elevate the play of himself and his teammates. Just carrying the Nuggets team along with Jamal Murray to the Western Conference Finals. They made two-1 comebacks all primarily due to him and Jamal. And, you could just kind of see a full repertoire on display. Just, his shooting, obviously his passing skills. Even defensively, he kind of held his own some games, even though that's been a common criticism of him. And I know Embiid might be better defensively when he's healthy and engaged, but I think one thing that's kind of keeping me from, being higher than Embiid is just his durability, his conditioning. He's not availability might be a concern, and he's not totally playing at his highest level like every game. And obviously they haven't made it to the conference finals yet, even though they were 4 bounces away from potentially doing so in the 18-19 playoffs. So yeah, I think it's just more comfortable with Jokic's game so far, and just really seeing him take that leap into making Nuggets a legitimate contender.
Yeah, that's fair. I do think it's interesting that Jokic, he and Embiid seem to have the opposite trajectory, where I feel like in the playoffs, everyone can make all the jokes about Jokic's conditioning that they want, but in the playoffs, he comes through, whether it's 2019 playoffs or the 2020 playoffs. Whereas Embiid, obviously on a night-to-night basis, I feel like he's the more intimidating matchup. He just is so physically overpowering. But we've seen in multiple playoffs where he can get frustrated, have bad body language, get tired towards the ends of games and whatnot. So I think that's a very reasonable pick. I think what's really interesting is that those are the only two clear superstars from this draft.
Yeah, there's this one tier of just two players in the rest, and there's a few solid players that we'll jump into pretty soon.
Yeah, so with that, I'm really curious to see who you take at 3.
Ooh, so at number 3, I'm gonna go with I consider which players would contribute to winning the most, and based on that, I'm gonna take Marcus Smart with number 3 pick in the 2014 redraft.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. So I had Smart in my top five, which is higher than he went in the original draft. Walk me through the pick here. So he would be in this case he would be going to Philadelphia, which is ironic because he was given the Sixers fits in 2018.
Yeah, I mean, just seeing like this playoffs just is like nightly like two-way impact on both ends of the floor. Defensively, he can he can literally guard 1 to 5. There's a reason he calls himself like a stretch six. It's because he has the ability to play great perimeter defense on guards and wings, just be able to sputter them, give them great ball pressure, playing great help defense, and then when it comes to guarding power forwards, even some centers, his lower body is strong enough so that power forward centers can't move him that easily in the post. Like he's gonna make them work for their buckets. And offensively, um, his shooting has definitely improved a lot since he came in. I remember his sophomore year, the first 3 seasons or so, like he shot like what 30% from three, like something that was pretty awful. But he's gradually improved that three pointer. He's becoming a more reliable shooter. And as a passer, he's always been pretty underrated. I think that doesn't get talked about enough. He's able to, keep the ball moving in Boston's offense. I guess one concern I still have him is, he does get like too comfortable with the three ball sometimes coming because he gets too overconfident, and he thinks he thinks he's Steph Curry sometimes. He tries to, shoot too many when it might be hurting the team more than helping the team. But he's just a winning player. That's my overall takeaway from him.
Yeah, I definitely can't disagree. I mean, I can't disagree with you there. He's, when it comes down to crunch time and being in the trenches, obviously sometimes he might take a shot where you're like, no, 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 no. But like you said, at the end of the day, he just has such a good knack and feel for the game. And sorry, he has such a good feel for the game and just kind of a knack to make winning plays in the moment.
Right.
So I certainly can agree with you. I I think when you look at the players in this draft and their impact on winning, I would say Marcus Smart is easily up there. So I think that's a good choice. That then takes me to pick four, which was the Magic. In the original draft, it was Aaron Gordon. And I'm really torn here because I have one player who I think theoretically could be really good. I just um, in the right situation, and another player who is a little more limited with their ceiling, but I think has made a bigger impact on winning per se so far. And you know, so I'm gonna go with the latter, and I'm gonna take Clint Capella.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yeah, so I guess I mean, so like I was alluding to, with Clint Capella, you know exactly what you're gonna get. In the best case scenario, you should know exactly what you're gonna get, and that is a big man who can protect the rim and is mobile enough to be semi-switchable onto in today's switch heavy NBA, and is going to rebound the hell out of the ball and also can finish lobs and is athletic enough to essentially be the roller in the pick and roll. So um, yeah, he's not gonna be the go-to guy in your offense. He's not gonna I don't expect him to one day start draining threes. And he's not even a great free throw shooter, but at the end of the day, he's been on some really good teams. Granted, he was in a situation that was literally like tailor like perfect for him to thrive. But at the end of the day, I've seen him do well on the biggest stage and be on some really, really good teams. In fact, some title contending teams. So I think I'm going to go with him instead of another player who we can talk about later, who I think is a little more theoretical at the moment.
Yes, that's not a bad pick. Obviously he offers tremendous vertical spacing. He was pretty vital to those Rockets teams when they had CP3 and Harden. There's one kind of gripe I have about him is in the past, if you look at his playoff numbers in the past, his past two appearances in the postseason, they've gone down somewhat significantly from his regular season numbers because I feel like sometimes maybe his defense or I guess lack of like a refined offensive game kind of gets exposed in the postseason, and then he kind of gets put off the floor a bit more. So that's just one kind of gripe I have about him. That's why I had him in the top 6, but now at the 4th spot.
Yeah, okay, I certainly agree. Like, I mean, the statistical drop off, though it's not like crazy, it is certainly noticeable, right?
Right.
But yeah, at the end of the day, it was down to I felt like with the other options I had here, it was a lot of like not just theoretical, but guys who have like shown promise and whatnot, but haven't quite been in like winning
Yeah.
situations per se, or just aren't in that fringe all-star category. So that's kind of why I went with Capella here. But I was seriously considering taking someone else. But I'm curious to see now who you're thinking of taking with the 5th pick.
Yeah. Okay. So the 5th pick, this might or might not surprise you. I don't know. But with the 5th pick, I'm going to take Jusuf Nurkic.
Whoa, whoa. Okay. Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was pretty torn. There's a lot of, good names that I could go with number 5, but I went with Nurkic because, he he's a very skilled two-way guy. I mean, offensively, he has a still good back to basket game, even though that's kind of been washed away from most playbooks. But he's still pretty effective there, and he's also a good passer. He operates in a high elbow with those dribble handoffs. He can make passes to cutters, making these easier for us, Damian CJ. And you can see that when he came back from the injury in the bubble, he kind of gave the Blazers a bit of a boost. I mean, we talked about how absurd Damian Lillard was in those games, but New York just definitely gave him a big boost, even though conditioning wise, he did look tired from not having played for so long. And that he's definitely a very good rebounder. I think he's a good post defender who has because of his he has a good good lower body strength, good core strength. He's able to wall off defenders with his body. Um, his perimeter defense is definitely lacking. That's why Portland plays drop cards with him, and that can get exposed when you have so many guards who can just just shoot off the screen. So that's definitely a bit of a weakness. But overall, I feel pretty comfortable betting on Nurkic because he has we see what he can bring to the table with all the skills he has on both ends of the floor.
Yeah. Okay. So what's interesting is I didn't have Nurkic in my top 10, but I also don't feel like I feel like he could easily be in that, in that conversation. Like I look at the guys in my top 10 and I don't feel like he's like significantly worse or anything, which is something you and I spoke about earlier where a lot of guys here are solid, but I'd say like that 5 to 20, or there's a lot of solid rotation guys or guys that you would still want to take a chance on in the NBA. So that's certainly interesting. He's obviously Nurkic specifically has had some bad injury luck, but he's been pretty good when he has played, and like you alluded to, he certainly gave the Blazers life down in Orlando. So I think that's a fine pick. Wow. Okay. So at number 6 with the Celtics, I'm gonna take Zach LaVine, and
Okay, not bad.
the reason Zach LaVine, I know I'm sure that the what NBA Twitter or the analytics community probably don't love Zach LaVine, and the resume so far, he hasn't played in the playoffs yet, and his team back in Minnesota, when he tore his ACL, the team actually played better. So I know that those are two kind of things that don't look great on paper, but I think that I've been fortunate to be able to see him in person, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think that he has such a rare combination of athleticism, both in terms of like jumping and also of kind of the quick twitch of being able to get to his spots and kind of hit unconventional shots off the dribble. So I think I'll put it this way: I think he has I think he certainly can still be an all-star. And based on that, I just think that if he's in a better situation, such as, playing for Brad Stevens, I think that I think he could be a lot better than what he's shown so far.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he has definitely good, foundational base. He's hella athletic. He shoots the ball pretty well, both at all three levels. Yeah, I mean, playing for Jim Boynton isn't easy at all. Actually, it makes life very difficult for his players. So, in a better situation, he might, be a more impactful player. Maybe, obviously, advanced stats are not very friendly towards him. So, in a better situation, they might reflect better of him. Maybe people have, maybe he has a better reputation. But he's a fairly solid player.
Yep. So with that, the pick, who are you taking for the Lakers at 7?
7. Okay, so this might surprise you again. I think I'm really betting on his projection. I'm really betting that he can build off last season. And I'll give you a hint. He had fantastic performance in the bubble. Fantastic. So with the
Oh,
seventh pick, I'm
yep.
going to pick TJ Warren. Yeah, you said it. TJ Warren.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What's the thinking here?
Yeah, so for a long time, I feel like he was pretty underrated, like especially in Phoenix, where the team wasn't very good, but he was still dropping like I guess like 15 to 20 points a game. Um, it's funny because before the 18-19 season, he didn't shoot the three ball that well at all. He was mostly operating in mid range, but then he started adding the three to his repertoire, and then when he got traded to the Pacers for absolutely nothing, he added I think playing under Nick McMillan was he became a better defender under McMillan. Than he was in Phoenix, and as I saw in the bubble, he showed an increased propensity for launching, off the dribble threes, which I always thought could have been added to his repertoire. So when you combine improved defense with um, clearly improved 3-point shooting and then his ability to score all three levels, I think it's a very like I said, solid foundational base, and I think he can easily build on that as he continues his play for the Pacers.
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable pick. I think once he kind of became a more willing and an improved 3-point shooter, I really believe that he is of all the guys in the NBA, he certainly has one of the more kind of old school yet also well-rounded offensive repertoires in the game for someone of his size. So he's certainly
Right.
I certainly enjoy watching him. Although I must say, when he goes up against Jimmy Butler, I am like 100% Team Jimmy.
Oh
But
yeah, I mean Jimmy kind of showed why he's still much better player.
yeah, but yeah, okay, that's okay. So TJ Warren, who was picked, he was the 14th pick. Now he becomes the 7th pick, so he moves up 7 spots in this redraft. So that's interesting. At 8 with Sacramento. So funny thing, the original pick here was Nick Stauskas, but I'm gonna go with a guard, but it's not Stauskas, and this might once again might be a little bit more of a theoretical. I shouldn't even say that because this player has shown a lot, but I'm gonna go with Spencer Dinwiddie, and
All
I'm
right.
gonna go with Dinwiddie because this is 2014. Well, so first and foremost, I just feel like at this point in time, the Kings don't need more bigs. Um, they certainly need guards because they're about to lose Isaiah Thomas. And I just generally speaking, I feel like if you either need a stabilizing point guard or you need a point guard who can be a fringe or a fringe all star or an all star. And I think Spencer Dinwiddie has that upside, especially I also once again this is more of a theoretical thing, but I like the fact that he's a little bit of a taller and more versatile guard. Like he can play both guard spots and he can play make, and but he can also score. So I'm gonna go Dinwiddie.
Yeah, I mean Dinwiddie has turned into one of the more interesting point guards in the league. I mean, he didn't even do anything with Detroit, and then the Nets pick him up, and suddenly he's like running the offense, close down games from taking the last shot. So it's really interesting how his career's played out. It's interesting to see what role he plays the next season when they have get Kyrie and KD back.
Yeah. or if he gets traded, we'll see.
Yeah, also a
But
possibility.
yeah. All right. So 9 is Charlotte. The original pick was Noah Vonleh, which no disrespect to Noah Vonleh, but I, this is a funny story, and before I let you make the pick, during the draft there was a lot of hype about two things, which were how big his hands were and how long his wingspan was. And when those were the two main talking points, I immediately alarms went off in my mind. I was like, is there nothing else
Right.
that
Like,
is there
show
nothing else?
you actually missed something other than like having big hands and big wingspan. Like, you have skill or not? Because that was my concern with him. He was like really really raw from a
Yeah.
technical point.
So I say that to say this is why I always, though, physical measurements are great. If those are the only things you can show me, I get a little bit concerned. But anyhow,
Right.
who you taking with 9?
So this is a power forward who also has intriguing athletic tools, but maybe it hasn't panned out the way people expect him to. I'm going to take Aaron Gordon with ninth pick.
Okay. So he went 4 in the original draft, but he's shown promise. He's been in an interesting situation in Orlando where they've had a lot of big men and they've played him in many different types of roles. What's your like 20-second, what are your 20-second thoughts on Aaron Gordon?
So he's shown flashes of being a very good defensive player. He's been adding a three-point shots to his repertoire, though that's been very inconsistent at best. And I just feel like he just hasn't been utilized correctly in his entire career. I mean, first they tried playing a small forward, and then they drafted Isaac. So he's trying to turn into a 3-and-D forward instead of. I really wish his role was more of like a Blake Griffin or even Draymond type of role where he can like make short rolls to him, make passes on those short rolls, or he could just dive to him and like finish lobs. I feel like he just hasn't been used correctly whatsoever. It's kind of a shame, but even with that being said, I feel like he still has some solid skills within him.
Yeah, I'm with you. To me, he's Draymond, but you take a little bit away of the IQ and playmaking, but also in like with Blake-ish athleticism, which is obviously a very promising prospect, but it's a matter of whether kind of what he sees himself as, right? Because if I feel like there's times where he kind of wants to be the guy, and I don't know if that's what's best suited for him
Right.
and for optimizing the team. But like you said, he's been in a question, a so-so situation in Orlando. But the bad news is you just took him in Charlotte, so Charlotte doesn't have a great history of
Oh
developing.
yeah, that's right.
Well, at least for a couple years there. To be fair, they had Steve Clifford, who I thought was a good coach, but there was a couple years there where they were taking a lot of bigs, and I just felt like the bigs never got better. So that's just an observation I had. But anyhow, at 10, so this was originally Alfred Payton, who was drafted by the Sixers, then traded to the Magic. I'm I'm torn here because there's one guy here who I really like.
I think I know who it is, but I'm not going to say it.
So there's a player that I really like, but then there's also like players who have accomplished more thus far. I'm trying to think. Who did Okay, so real quick. So I'm assuming that this pick's still going to get traded to the Magic, and with the fourth pick with the Magic, I took Capella earlier, so I'm going to go more for a guard or a perimeter player. Ah, man, this is tough. Okay. You know what? I'm going to go
Surprise me.
with I'm really dragging this out. I am going to take you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna take Jeremy Grant.
Whoa. Okay. All right.
Which, oh gosh, do I no, screw it. I'm taking Gary Harris.
Gary Harris. Okay.
I'm
All
taking
right.
Gary Harris.
Okay.
Gosh, I just went back and forth.
All
So
right. Interestingly, he wasn't in my top 14, but I'm gonna hear reasoning.
Okay, so Gary Harris, I thought slid in the actual draft. Like I would have taken him in. I would have taken him at 11, which is ironically like in the original draft, the Nuggets took Doug McDermott at 11 and then traded for Gary Harris, who somehow slid. I would have taken him earlier, but so he's had some bad injury luck, but in the last 2 seasons, it's been like really confusing, like what the team has gotten better, but what the hell has happened to his to his shooting. But at the end of the day, coming out of Michigan State, he's got great size. Like he's like perfect height for a prototypical two guard that can, and he's also got good athleticism and instincts to both guard, to guard both point guards and, wings. And on top of that, I think there's there's enough promise with his ability to shoot to where he's never going to be like a liability, like a Michael Kidd Gilchrist to where, or a Tony Allen. So I feel like he's, assuming that the health is there, I feel like he's a fairly solid pick that you can groom.
Yeah, so I mean, the Demo Gary Harris was a thought like what 3 seasons ago, 4 seasons ago. I thought he really started taking leap as a very solid two-way player who can, he's a really good three-point shooter. He's a really good cutter. He's very very good defense. But I mean, yeah, the past few seasons, just all the injuries and his offensive game is really falling off the cliff. I don't think I remember in some games he wasn't even getting minutes at the end of games because he just was such a liability on offense. But it's kind of sad to see because I really had higher hopes for him. But even so, he still offers a lot of value defensively.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna go Gary Harris, even though there was a player that I like more at that spot. I'm curious to see if you'll take him at 11. So
Yeah, so at 11, I'm kind of deciding between two players, both of which have had good production, but maybe they don't really help their teams win in a sense. Maybe it's more like empty calories. You might know
okay.
what you might
Yeah.
know no you might know which two players I'm talking about, but so are we this is the 11th pick, right? Or is
Yep.
it
11.
so okay, the Nuggets selected here and then traded to the Bulls. So man, okay. Uh you know what? You know what, screw it. I'm gonna take Andrew Wiggins at 11.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, this is tough. Because I was choosing between him and another like kind of empty stats guy, but um, yeah, obviously we all know the story about him. He was a high touted prospect, and then he kind of just didn't work out in Minnesota. He was scoring a lot. I mean, he averaged like 22 points a game, like his best season, but he didn't really improve. And advanced stats really don't like him.
Yeah.
Um, he's not wasn't great defensively. I kind of felt like Dream Butler arriving, like obviously made a plus with him. He helped a lot there, but it kind of hurt Wiggins' development a bit because Wiggins is best with ball in his hands, but now they added another ball dominant wing to the rotation, and he's kind of less effective off the ball because he's not a great 3-point shooter. And yeah, just obviously there's questions about his work ethic or whether or not he really likes the game, his passiveness. Um, I think this past season there was this one stretch in October, November where he was playing really good basketball. People were like, "Yo, did Andrew Wiggins finally turn the corner?" And then the talk kind of fell off, and then he got traded to the Warriors. So um, maybe he's one of those players where he might have been better. He was drafted in a different situation, but it's hard. I mean, like he's so polarizing. Just people have such different opinions of him. Like I still think he has some potential left, but at the same time, you know, anytime there's a player who's like kind of passive, doesn't have like that really love for the game, it does kind of alarm me. So I'm hoping he has a chance to turn the corner to the Warriors, but if it doesn't happen, then I mean that's probably it for him.
Yeah. Um, that's ironic, right? Because here, if you have him at 11, he goes to Chicago. He ends up once again with
Jimmy
Tibbs and
Butler.
Jimmy Butler.
Oh my
But
goodness. Okay.
what's interesting though is that Bulls team, like literally, they could have used a wing like Andrew Wiggins, right? Because
Right.
they had Rose, they had Butler, they had Pau Gasol, they had Joakim Noah, and they had Mirotic as well. But they could have used a guy like Andrew Wiggins. For whatever reason, Andrew Wiggins has, generally speaking, played pretty well whenever he goes head to head against LeBron. And obviously, that season they got eliminated by LeBron. But yeah, I mean, I wonder if he's a guy that, as a fourth or fifth option, like a third, fourth, fifth option, he's good, as opposed to in Minnesota early on, he was asked to be the guy, and then Towns came in and he was kind of 1B. But at this point in the lottery, right, like at 11, I don't mind that pick because you're just kind of betting on the talent at that point. But like you said, there are red flags with regards to just kind of what you hear about, does he love, how is his work ethic? Does he love basketball and whatnot? And is he just an empty calories kind of player? But yeah, I don't mind that pick. I at 12, I'm gonna take who I thought you were considering, and I wanted to take earlier. I have him actually a little bit higher on my board, but that's because I'm biased, and he's one of my favorite college players ever. He's probably my favorite power forward that
I
I've
already know who it
watched.
is.
Yeah, strictly in terms of like guys that I, growing up that I wanted to be like. I'm gonna go Julius Randle at 12
Yep.
to the
Julius.
Sixers. So once again, I must admit I definitely have some bias here, but so Julius Randle, he's talk about bad injury luck. He had terrible injury luck, literally breaking his leg in his first NBA game. He never had like off the wall pop type athleticism, but he always had enough to where like you could see him absolutely just dominate and bully guys, especially in college. And he certainly, what I always liked about him was had like he had very good like hand-eye coordination to be able to kind of put the ball on the floor, dribble, and kind of craft his way to the basket and kind of finish in midair, finish both sides, etc. So I've always felt like he's like he's definitely like a good ball handler for a big man. And he's obviously got the size, like he's definitely got the strength and the speed to kind of keep up. He's a little bit short or not short. He doesn't have like long arms, and he's not 6'11", 7 feet. But at the end of the day, I think that he has a good enough motor, and like I alluded to, a lot of good things going for him to where in the worst case he's going to be like like a 18-8 guy, and in the best case, I think in the right situation he can be an all-star.
Yeah, so he's definitely, he definitely has fairly solid production. I guess he can give you 20 to 10 on some nights, definitely a high floor in terms of just pure stats. But um, there are two main problems I have with him is just like he's never been a good three-point shooter. He shot 27% this season, and yeah, he still has a propensity to take, these like bad shots, just kind of chucking them, and then he's a definitely good ball handler, but sometimes he tries to do too much with it. Like I think the Knicks fans they love to like make fun of him for like spinning to turnovers. Like he drives and he just spins and just runs to the defender and just loses the ball. So it's just like statistically he looks like good, but when you really watch him, he's pretty frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, I mean he definitely can be because he's yeah, I mean, I know what you're talking about with the spins and sometimes like when he's close to the basket, getting a little bit of tunnel vision. But um, to me, one thing that always resonates with me, and once again, I'm being biased here, but I remember during the Champions Classic when he was in college, there was a play where there were literally three Michigan State defenders. I think it was like Gary Harris, Brandon Dawson, and I want to say Adrian Payne, but I'm not sure. But essentially, three like tough, like hard nosed, good physical Michigan State defenders. They literally triple teamed him, and he still managed to kind of he still managed to convert a crafty finish. And
Yeah, he looked like grown man there.
yeah, that's the thing. Like sometimes it's like he's got the handle combined like with this like kind of grown man. He's like in the body of this kind of big dude. So anyhow, I love Julius Randle. I really hope it works out for him. But right now he's in New York, which we'll see. We'll see what happens next year. But so far, unfortunately, he has not played in the playoffs, which is why it was hard for me. It's for me to justify taking him over Gary Harris, at least as of this moment. But yeah. Moving on, the last pick that you have at 13, which was the T Wolves. Who you taking?
I'm going to take Bogdan Bogdanovic at number 13.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a pretty smart, pretty solid pick. He's I mean, he didn't come to the NBA for a little bit while, right? Like
Right,
I think he
right.
was 3 years. He stayed another 3 years, but since he's been around, he's been good.
Yeah, so he can handle the ball. He can you can make threes off the dribble, off the catch. So offensively, he has a very solid repertoire. Defensively, he's not good. I'm just going to say that. But it's important to note that when the Kings made that midseason lineup change, when they replaced Buddy Hield with Bogdanovic in the starting lineup, they started to play better. They just look more cohesive. Unfortunately, they didn't parlay into a top spot, but that was encouraging to see. One uh, maybe one kind of grab I have on him is he's very streaky. Sometimes he can go off and drop 35 on you, but sometimes he shoots like what 2 for 17, like one of like 3 of 16 from the field. It's kind of hard to watch, but I mean he offers a very solid skill set, and it's also important to note that in international play he's been a very clutch player. I remember I think it was in FIBA like a year ago. He was playing really well. He made some big shots for um does it were Serbia or Croatia? I'm not sure, but he played really well at the tournament.
Yeah, can't fault that pick. Um, Trying to okay, so moving on to the last pick of the lottery. This was the Suns, the original pick being TJ Warren. I have a lot of options here, right? I could go
Lots of
with
options.
a lot of solid options. I could take Jeremy Grant, who I mentioned earlier, and then change my mind on. I could take Jordan Clarkson. I could take Jabari Parker. I could take Rodney Hood. I could take Alfred
Joe Harris.
Payton. And that's who I'm going to take. I'm going to take Joe Harris.
Oh, okay, all right.
And
Around my mouth.
here's why. Because with him, I know that he has one elite skill that there is a premium on. And with regards to kind of other with regards to the other side of the ball, I think he's fine enough to where he's not gonna be like a Ryan Anderson to where you can't even play him
Right.
in the playoffs in the highest leverage moments. So he's a little bit older because he is a 4-year college player, but to me, I just think he is an elite. He has one skill that he has shown that he can do at a very high level at the NBA level, and that to me is enough to for a team like at this time Phoenix, who at the time had Dragic and Bledsoe. I think um,
that's very very useful.
yeah, I think they just need more shooting because at the time they were playing up and down, and a very fun and exciting brand of basketball. But yeah, I'm gonna go Joe Harris just because I feel like with some of the other guys, with Jabari and Alfred Payton, you're kind of going on the theoretical and hoping that things work out better for them. Rodney Hood is he's obviously a little taller than Joe Harris, but he's not as good of a shooter as Joe Harris. Jeremy Grant obviously brings versatility, but with once again, I think there's such a premium on shooting. And then Jordan Clarkson was the other guy I was considering, and he's definitely like a spark off the bench. But I felt like the Suns at this moment in time, they were better off with like an elite shooter as opposed to like an energy microwave scorer off the bench.
Yeah, yeah, and adding on to that, there were like a few other players that just missed my board. One of them was, or you mentioned some of them, but I also want to say Dwight Powell. I think he's a
Yep.
very underrated big man. He was obviously in the Dallas offense with Luka operating the helm. He just set screens, roll to the rim. Luka goes up to him and he finishes. So that's just a very clear defined role for him. Unfortunately, towards Achilles, don't know in his contract year, so I don't know how that's going to affect his long-term valuation. But he was very, very solid complementary role player for the Mavericks. And someone else that just missed my list was Kyle Anderson.
Yep.
Doesn't have like gaudy stats at all, but I mean, he not a good three-point shooter, but with the Spurs and with the Grizzlies, like his ball handling, his vision, it's definitely there. And also, he's a pretty solid defender as well. So there's a lot of like little things just don't show up on a stat sheet.
Yeah. And a few undrafted guys that I should give an honorable mention to are Tyler Johnson, who honestly could make a case for being taken in the lottery, as well as Torrey Craig, who is not a guy that will impress you on the stat sheet, but he's a really good defender, and he's just a winning guy, and he's obviously shown that with these last 2 seasons as a starter, or sorry, as like a part-time starter in Denver.
Yeah, I mean, what Corey Greg does bring is like a junkyard dog mentality, where he just
Yeah,
plays hard every play. But his offensive game is very, very limited. He's just kind
yeah,
of just regulated to just shooting threes and open threes and cutting. So
yeah. What's funny is I literally had no idea who Torrey Craig was like when he came into the NBA. So I was like, okay, let me. And I'm someone who follows a lot of college basketball. I literally had never heard of him. So then I went on his Wikipedia page, and I hadn't even heard of the school that he had went to, which was USC Upstate. So um, yeah, that's the beauty of the NBA, is that dudes from the most random, unknown parts of the basketball world can make a difference.
right, yeah, for sure. Great, it was fantastic find by their GM Tim Connolly.
Yeah, absolutely. But so that wraps up our redraft. So I think that's a good place to that's a good place to end it. Um, I want to thank you for joining me, Andrew, and to the listeners. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe on whatever medium you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, or YouTube. Um, Once again, thanks for listening, and Andrew, thanks for joining me, man.
For sure, man. This was a lot of fun. Take care.